The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Chapter 1, Part 8. On the table in the light of the big lamp with a red shed, he spread a piece of parchment rather like a map. This was made by Thror, your grandfather Thorin, he said in an answer to Dwarf's excited questions. It is a plan of the mountain. I don't see that this will help us much, said Thorin, disappointedly after a glance. I remember the mountain well enough and the land about it, and I know where Mirkwood is and weathered hearth where the great dragons bred. The Misty Mountain and Mirkwood, the map of Wilderland. There is a dragon marked in red on the mountain, said Balin, but it will be easy enough to find him without that if ever we arrive there. There is one point that you haven't noticed, said the wizard, and that is the secret entrance. You see that the rune on the west side and the hand pointing to it from the other runes? That marks the hidden passage to the lower halls. Look at the map at the beginning of this book, and you will see there the runes. These are the runes and a hand pointing to the lower halls, the secret passage. Far to the north are the grey mountains and the withered earth where came the great worms. It may have been secret once, said Thorin, but how do we know that it is secret any longer? Old Smoke has lived there long enough now to find out anything there is to know about those caves. The smug here is the dragon. He may, but he can't have used it for years and years. Why? Because it is too small. 5 feet high, the door, and there may walk abreast, say the runes. But the smug could not creep into hole that size, not even when he was a young dragon. Certainly not after devouring so many dwarfs and men of Dale. It seems a great big hole to me, squeaked Bilbo, who had no experience of dragons and only of hobbit holes. He was getting excited and interested again, so that he forgot to keep his mouth shut. He loved maps, and in his hall there hung a large one of the country round with all his favorite walks marked on it in the ink. How could such a large door he kept secret from everybody outside, apart from the dragon? He asked. He was only a little hobbit, you must remember. In lot of ways, said Gandalf. But in what way this one has been hidden, we don't know without going to see. From what it says on the map, I should guess there is a closed door which has been made to look exactly like the side of the mountain. That is the usual dwarf's method. I think that's it, right? Isn't it? Quite right, said Thorin. Also, went on Gandalf, I forgot to mention that with the map went a key, A small and curious key. Here it is, he said, and handed to Thorin a key with a long barrel and intricate wards made of silver. Keep it safe. Indeed, I will, said Thorin, and he fastened it upon a fine chain that hung about his neck and under his jacket. Now things begin to look more hopeful. This news alters them much for the better. So far, we have had no clear idea what to do. We thought of going east as quiet and careful as we could, as far as the long lake. After that, the trouble would begin. The lake on the east worth upon the long lake dwell upon. Here is the gateway to Long Lake, very east of the map, far away from the lonely mountain. So after that, the trouble would begin. Long time before that, if I know anything about roads east, interrupted Gandalf, we might go from there up along the river running, went on Thorin, taking no notice, and so to the ruins of Dale, the old town in the valley there under the shadow of the mountain. But we none of us like the idea of the front gate. The river runs right of it through the great cliff at the south of mountain, and out of it comes the dragon too, far too often unless he has changed his habits. Here is the running river in the shadow of the mountain. Great cliff south of mountain. That would be no good, said the wizard. Not without a mighty warrior, even a hero. I tried to find one, but the warriors are busy fighting one another in distant lands, and in this neighborhood, heroes are scarce. So, simply not to be found. Swords in these parts are mostly blunt, and axes are used for trees, and shields as cradles and dish covers, and dragons are comfortably far off and therefore legendary. That is why I settled on burglary, especially when I remembered the existence of a side door. And here is our little Bilbo Baggins, the burglar, the chosen and selected burglar. So now let's get on and make some plans. Very well then, said Thorin. Supposing the burglar expert gives us some ideas or suggestions. He turned with a mock politeness to Bilbo. First, I should like to know a bit more about things, said he, feeling all confused and bit shaky inside, but so far still tookishly determined to go on with things. I mean, about the gold and the dragon and all that, and how it got there, and who it belongs to, and so on and further. Bless me, said Thorin. Haven't you got a map? And didn't you hear our song? And haven't we been talking about this all for hours? All the same, I should like it all plain and clear, said he, obstinately putting on his business matter, usually reserved for people who try to borrow money of him, and doing this best to appear wise and prudent and professional and live up to Gandalf's recommendation. Also, I should like to know about risk, out of pocket expenses, time required, remuneration, and so forth. By which he meant, what am I going to get out of it? And am I going to come back alive? Oh, very well, said Thorin. Long ago, in my grandfather Thorin's time, our family was driven out of the far north and came back with all their wealth and their tools to this mountain on the map. It had been discovered by my far ancestor, Thrain the Old, but now they mined and they tunneled and they made huger halls, and greater workshops. And in addition, I believe they found a good deal of gold and a great many jewels too. Anyway, they grew immensely rich and famous, and my grandfather was king under the mountain again, and treated with great reverence by the mortal men who lived to the south and were gradually spreading up the running river as far as the valley overshadowed by the mountain. They built a merry town of Del there in those days. Kings used to send for our smiths and rewards even the least skillful most richly. The fathers would beg us to take their sons as apprentices and pay us handsomely, especially in food supplies, which we never bothered to grow or find for ourselves. Altogether, those were good days for us, and the poorest of us had money to spend and to lend, and leisure to make beautiful things just for fun of it. Not to speak the most marvelous and magical toys, the like of which is not to be found in the world nowadays. So my grandfather's halls became full of armor and jewels and carvings and cups, and the toy market of Dale was the wonder of North. Undoubtedly, that was what brought the dragon. Dragons steal gold and jewels, from men and elves and dwarfs, wherever they can find them, and they guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever unless they are killed, and never enjoy brass ring of it. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from a bad, though they usually have a good notion of current market value, and they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a little loose scale of their armor. There were lots of dragons in the north in those days, and gold was probably getting scarce up there, with the dwarfs flying south or getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction that dragons make going from bad to worse. There was a most specially greedy, strong, and wicked worm called Smug. One day he flew up into air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise like hurricane coming from north, and the pine trees on the mountain creaking and cracking in the wind. Some of the dwarfs who happened to be outside, I was one lucky, a fine adventurous lad in those days, always wandering about, and it saved my life that day. Well, from a good way off, we saw a dragon settle on our mountain in a spout of flame. Then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods, they all went up in fire. By the time all the bells were ringing in Dell and the warriors were arming, the dwarfs rushed out of their great gate, but there was the dragon waiting for them. None escaped that way. The river rushed up in stream, and a fog fell on Dell. And the fog, the dragon came on them and destroyed most of the warriors. The usual unhappy story. It was only too common in those days. Then he went back and crept in through the front gate and routed out all the halls, the lanes and tunnels, alleys, cellars, mansions, and passages. And after that he went, and after there were no dwarfs left alive in the side, and he took all their wealth for himself. Probably, for that is the dragon's way. He had piled it all up in a great heap far inside, and sleeps on it for a bed. Later, he used to crawl out of the great gate and come by night to Dale and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, until Dale was ruined and all the people dead or gone. What goes on there now, I don't know for certain, but I don't suppose anyone lives nearer to the mountain than the far edge of the long lake nowadays. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding and cursed smug. And there we were, unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather with signed beards. They looked very grim, but they said very little. When I asked how they had got away, they told me to hold my tongue and said that one day in the proper time I should know. After that, we went away, and we have had to earn our livings as best as we could up and down the lands, often enough sinking as low as blacksmith work or even coal mining. But we have never forgotten our stolen treasure. And even now, when I will allow, we have a good bit laid by and are not so badly off. Here Thorin stroked the gold chain and round his neck. We still mean to get it back and to bring our curses home to Smug if we can. I have often wondered about my father's and my grandfather's escape. I see now they must have had a private side door which only they knew about. But apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got hold of it and why it did not come down to me, the rightful heir.